Unity in the air? Hey, thank you. Thank you. The Unity Jazz Band, is that right? Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Wow, that makes speaking a little easier, okay? I asked one of the board members, tell me something funny that's happened at Unity recently. And she shared this story with me. Raimi, your board president, asked Steve, your vice president, to open with prayer. And so Steve began to pray. And he got into a couple of lines, and one of the board members who might be a little hard of hearing said, I can't hear you. Steve thought for a second and said, I'm not talking to you. That was made up, okay? Steve's going, I don't remember that, but anyway. Thank you. This morning I want to talk about the omega point and eventually ask the question, is it just a pipe dream? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's good to be with good people to help me out. Anyway, so the omega point is was the coining of it was by a Jesuit priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And with the omega point, he was talking about a time when everything would come into oneness. Everything was going to work for us. Everybody is filled with love. Chardin called God love. He said the power of God is the power of love moving in and through us and creating us. And so, of course, he was kind of an interesting guy because as a Jesuit priest teaching at Notre Dame in France, he had certain expectations about the Catholic Church, most of which he did not follow. And so as he talked about evolution as he grew, because he was a paleontologist, he was a geologist, he was a priest, he was a philosopher, and he was getting a little confused because from his perspective of the universe, the Big Bang made sense. And so he studied the Big Bang theory, and he wrote this book, The Phenomenon of Man, and in it he started about the Big Bang. Out of the Big Bang, eventually became cells. Cells then multiplied and created different beings, especially like the fish, and so forth. And then what happened is the fish came out of the sea, and the cells still wanting to grow through the power of love driving them. What happened is that human beings were created eventually. And many of us today subscribe to that. But he was talking about this in 1920. Wrote his book in the 1930s, was not published until after his death in 1955 because the church would not allow it. What an interesting thing about him is that he had this desire that when he passed away, he would pass away at Easter, which would say to him and to others what he was saying was true. Okay? And he died in 1955 on an Easter Sunday. After he'd been to Mass, he seemed to be in perfect health, had a stroke, and fell to the ground. So his wish came true. And one of the things that he drove through the whole aspect of what he was talking about, this omega point, is that we were all evolving into the omega point. We had been through our physical evolution, mostly. And now we're evolving to this omega point, he called it, where everything was in oneness. His definition, which is on the slide here, is the omega point is a spiritual belief, scientific speculation that everything in the universe is fated to spiral towards a point of divine unification. I find it interesting that Stephen Hawking said that we would come to a point of singularity, and then the world would be over. Chardin thought something else would happen after that. Thank goodness, okay? And so as we look at that concept, it's kind of exciting. But the next question I ask on this next slide is the omega point just a pipe dream? And I ask that question because look around today. What's happening? We're seeing the understanding finally coming about of systemic racism. But at the same time, there's a lot of pain, a lot of grief in that. We know we have issues with immigration. And personally, immigration built this country, actually. But we still have these issues with it. Some are real issues, and some are opinions. We have going on in the world, again, a fairly major war that's threatening everybody and creates possibly a sense of fear among people. We also know that we have other work to do, that there is a tremendous polarity in our government. There is a tremendous polarity in churches, interesting enough. And so as we work together, do we really think this idea of becoming one will really work? Chardin said, next slide, the most telling and profound way of describing the evolution of the universe would undoubtedly be to trace the evolution of love. Now, one of the powers that you and I have, we're born with, and we can use however we want to, is the power of love. Most people understand conditional love because for many that's what they've experienced throughout their life. Chardin was talking about unconditional love. It was a power of creativity, the power to grow, the power to become spiritually evolved, the power to understand oneself and understand others, the power to forgive, the power to step into who and what we are and actually become that. And that's what he truly believed in. He also said, I like this one, growing old is like being increasingly penalized for a crime you haven't committed. I hope I get old enough to feel that, okay? Also, like last week, I said that Chardin was one of the people who said we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that is so true. Because when we think of ourselves as human beings, most of us were taught that we're worthless as human beings. We're sinners. We don't even have the right to talk to God except through Jesus. And yet, what we know is that we are God. That we all have been incarnated as Jesus was, as children of God. And so we don't need anybody to connect us with God because God is who we are and is within us. And we have the ability, thank goodness, to step into that. And when we start to see ourselves as spiritual beings and make that distinction, we begin, I believe, the journey to understanding others, to kindness, an understanding of what spiritual growth is all about, and we begin to actually spiral upwards in energy. And so, when we start to look at that, one of the things Jesus said many times was, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is now. The kingdom of heaven is within you. He never said the kingdom of heaven is 23 flights up. The kingdom of heaven is somewhere you're going to go when you die. What Jesus was saying, we can live in it now. And I think the omega point and the kingdom of heaven are one and the same. And so one of the things I want to say is that you can be in the omega point and lead in that position rather than wait for everybody else to get there. You are the leaders in the movement towards the omega point. And so when we go to this next slide, it says steps to the omega point. And the first is to create a spiritual action plan. I don't know if you've heard that terminology, but when I teach my classes, one of the assignments they have in Foundation of Unity is to actually write out and build a spiritual action plan. Now, some people go, well, how do we do that? And I say, well, do you pray? Yeah, well, write down when you're going to pray. Do you meditate? Yes, I meditate and pray. Write that down. Do you feel like you need to get out in nature and walk so you feel more connected with spirit within? Write that down. Do you journal? Write that down. Whatever it is that will work for you. And then post that on your mirror, on the refrigerator, the front of the refrigerator, and read it every day and create a habit of following the spiritual action plan. And what will happen, and I've had people report back to me who were in a class 4 years ago, recently, that spiritual action plan has increased and they feel themselves evolving. They know they are different today than they were. And people have even said, you've changed, what's going on? And what's happening, of course, is that this individual and others are growing because they have set an intention to do so. So create a spiritual action plan. I offer that to each of you as an opportunity if you want to move towards the omega point. The second one is to be principle. Now, the principles in unity, in my language, are one, there is but one source. We call it God, I call it spirit most of the time. Number two, it lives within us. Number three, the law of divine action, that what we think about, focus on, and if we do it from a spiritual concept with spirit leading us, we are going to create a something, where I want to use, that helps others, that supports others, because it's love in action. And so, be principle. What does that mean? It means that I am the Christ. You are the Christ. We are the Christ. It means that as we move forward, that we find that source of power and strength within ourselves. And if we do it properly, it's not the ego that has the power, it's spirit that has the power within us. And as we move forward from that, we then start to be divine expressions. And so we express that which we know we are, and that's being in principle. And to stay in principle, we pray and we meditate. That is where the power of creation takes place. And then the last one is we are people of action. I am a person of action. I take action on what it is I'm led to do and how to do that. And so be principle. The third one is be sacred service. Good, this week is working. Be sacred service. And what are we talking about? Well, you can approach any task with, not again. You ever been there? Yeah, sure, we all have. But what we can do instead is see everything that we create, everything that we do as a form of sacred service. The work that we do, it is sacred service. Whatever you've chosen as a profession, whatever you're doing in work, whether you want to be there or not, it is sacred service because you're showing up to express something and to help something happen that will help others. Sacred service is serving on church teams also. It's not just being a volunteer. It is being someone who is intentionally showing up to be guided by Spirit and let Spirit lead and see it in others also. So be sacred service. And we have all kinds of opportunities here to do that, by the way. I'm not going to do a whole ad, but a little bit. And so if it's something maybe you've done for a long time and now you're ready to come back and renew yourself, please do so. If there's a team you really would love to see change, then become the chairperson or the team leader. And take this opportunity To be compassionate to others, that's sacred service. To love others unconditionally, that's sacred service. And so be the sacred service that you are. And then the last step here I wanted to talk about is set intentions daily. Bishop Spong gave a talk that I heard in Newark, New Jersey, when I lived in that area. And he talked about his prayer life. And he would say, and he wrote about this also, but he'd say that what he'd do is spend about an hour in the morning in meditation. Then he'd spend another hour setting intentions. How am I going to show up today? And he got real specific about it. I have a 9 o'clock appointment, and it's going to be pretty difficult because the person's really upset with me. How am I going to show up as spirit? And then maybe he was going to have a luncheon meeting. How am I going to show up? Maybe he had a talk. How am I going to show up? He set his intentions literally through the day. I have that practice also. How am I going to show up? And sometimes when things might get a little heated or things get a little difficult, and you'll find this in me probably or see it. I try to hide it really good, but I become defensive. You know? And here's the funny thing. I don't think I'm being defensive, but I come across as being defensive. I'm justifying it now. No. Anyway, so I have to be aware of that. So my intention is, if that starts to happen, that I say to myself, I am becoming defensive or coming across as defensive. That's not where I want to be. And when I set that intention early in the morning, when I get in that situation, what happens, I see it immediately. And I change my demeanor. I change the way I'm thinking. I change the way that I'm expressing myself. So I can follow the intention that I set, that Spirit led me to set. And you can go through your whole day that way. And sometimes it takes me 15 minutes, and sometimes it takes me 30 minutes. Particularly on Thursday, I think it took me about an hour to get ready, because we were really busy, okay? But anyway, so set your intentions daily. Set that as part of your plan. And I'll guarantee you that you will start to see the omega point in yourself. In John 6:63, Jesus said to the disciples, "It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life." So here's Jesus saying something that goes against the interpretation of what he supposedly said. It goes against the idea of Jesus as the Savior. Now, I happen to think Jesus, what he taught, is salvation for all of us. What he taught. And here he's saying, Spirit's what's important, guys. Tap into yourself. Look at yourself. See your screen of life. And let that be a mirror of who you are. And study it. Because you'll find out whether you are in the human mode or the spiritual mode. Just by looking at ourselves and how we're showing up. And so as we understand that, we've been, again, to put the emphasis on spirit. Chardin's next quote says, "Our duty as men and women is to proceed as if limits to your ability did not exist. We are collaborators in creation." Now, a lot of you have been in unity for quite a while, some not quite as long as others, but I'll guarantee you that you understand what that means. But for those who don't, let me just say that we are creative beings. We are change makers by leading, not by forcing. We are individuals who can connect to ourselves in such a way that we can choose to express the God in us, the Christ in us, the I am in us. And when we start to do that, you see, we become collaborators with all creation. So as we move forward and we look at this omega point, what I believe is that the omega point is still a reality that will come into being. I think a lot of what we're dealing with today, a lot of people, and many are saying, I'm tired of this. I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be this way. And we can make that choice not to be that way, even though it's going on around us. But I want to see the change. And I think when we get to a tipping point, when enough people see that, there will come this change. What we're dealing with today is temporary. Feels like a long time sometimes, but it's temporary. And knowing that means that we have the power within us to overcome and to not be a part of that which is more human than spiritual. We make that choice ourselves. It's a choice that we make every day, especially if we have a spiritual action plan. Chardin made this statement. It's a powerful statement. Someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love, and then for a second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. I'll bet you that many of you know what that means. You've discovered fire once again. Because you know who you are. You know the work that you need to do. You understand what it means to be compassionate and care for others. You understand healthy relationships. And let's keep it that way here, okay? You understand that showing up, being loving, being kind, being understanding of spirit, of the ability to forgive, how powerful that is when you are managing it. And all of our powers are to be managed by us. They're there, and they can show up in different ways if we do not manage those. And we do not let the ego manage those. And so I would say to you that if you have not experienced the fire, now I'm going to sound like a Baptist, that if you come here on a regular basis, you will experience the fire. It's here. I feel it in this congregation. I feel it in this community, which is absolutely gorgeous, by the way, as you know. And so let's together discover fire for the second time. I know we can do it. I know we are doing it. And if we do, we then move into the omega point. I don't think the omega point is a time in history. I think it is an experience within us. So let your omega point be guided by the Christ within. Let your omega point turn you in such a way that you feel as though God is working in and through you. Become the fire. Be the fire. Lead as fire. God bless. So take a moment to feel those words of grace, of joy, of love. And know that the energy that is the universe is within each of us today here in this place. And affirm that by going to your heart space and allowing Spirit to open your heart wide open. To allow Spirit to guide you and direct you. And allow Spirit to draw you deeper as you experience the self, the beingness all that is. And take a moment to remember that you are the fire of the Spirit within you, the fire of love that comes from you. Feel that love, embrace that love, and sit with that love in a few moments of silence. Say that affirmation with me. I affirm